Yo, what's going on, guys? Let me know how everything sounds. Today we'll be discussing the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 offseason recap. If you guys haven't watched this before, we'll discuss what they did this offseason in terms of additions, who left, and everything else in between. Before in the next few weeks, we'll discuss their preview and predictions for the entire season. So let's get right into it. As always, I would like to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section. What is your expectations at this point for the Milwaukee Bucks? It seems like the Giannis Antetokounmpo saga has kind of quietly went away and that he's going to stay, but there's still, obviously, Shams Charania and ESPN continue to perpetuate the rumor that he still hasn't fully decided. Let's just get into everything that they've done. And before we start, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. What was your opinion of this offseason, and did you like it? If you enjoy this type of content, hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help out the channel a ton. Now, who did they draft? They did have a draft pick in this year's draft. They drafted the Serbian himself, Bogoljub Markovic, aka Bogey, and he's going to be stashed. He's someone that played for them in the summer league. He still looked a little green behind the ears, but this guy has a lot of skills to be a point forward who can be a switch big and moonlight at the three, kind of a Santi Aldama meets Pascal Siakam. Maybe not as good as Pascal, probably closer to Santi, but he has the flexibility of being able to come over next year on a two-way, and they could bring him on where he can be someone that actually helps them become a team that maybe starts to develop young talent like they've done with Ryan Rollins and Ajax in the back of their rotation to be legit, contributors instead of constantly retooling with veterans willing to play with Giannis. So I think that's the biggest thing that they're over here, just making sure that it's all working out to plan. So what is the team's current salaries and how does that all look like? Obviously, Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr., Cole Anthony. I guess Ajax technically can be classified as a point guard. I think he's more of a swingman or a small forward. That might have just been me doing a typo. But either way, they do have Jamarie Bouye on a two-way. He could be someone that gets converted. He's very good. Played for Off the Dome, San Francisco in college. A good scoring and passing playmaking guard. While Ryan Rollins more of a defensive guy. Kevin Porter, a good microwave bucket who's got some size and can get some steals and play make. Cole Anthony really just, a good scoring guard who I think is more suited to come off the bench. I wonder if it's going to be Cole Anthony or Kevin Porter being the guy who starts. And Ryan Rollins is obviously the change of pace player. Then we have AJ Green, I forgot what they called him, Milwaukee, or was it Milwaukee Larry Bird or whatever? Either way, he with Gary Trent. Look, I like Gary Harris, and he's a 3-and-D player in terms of archetype. Durability and availability, which is the best ability, have been something that's been really a question for him over the last few years, and they did get him at a minimum. So for me, I think that's the biggest thing. Outside of that, they do have Mark Sears, who's a combo guard as a two-way player. To me, they've got depth at those positions, multiple options, while having the most expensive player arguably be Kevin Porter Jr. is a win for this organization, as they have 6 players that actually can play right now. And Andre Jackson's another guy that I think is more of a swingman forward. So we're just going to talk about him a little later, and I'll put him right here with Taurean Prince and Amir Coffey and Mr. Ajax, Mr. Andre Jackson. Chris Livingston and Tyler Smith are more developmental guys that, unless they have to break the glass, I don't expect them to play. Kyle Kuzma with Bobby Portis is their power forwards, with probably Tyler Smith, Taurean Prince, and maybe in seldom small ball lineups, Ajax. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the starting power forward, obviously, but he also, I think this year is going to play a lot more center than you guys have ever seen before. Myles Turner making $25.3 million this year with Jericho Sims being the reserve. They brought in Myles Turner with that stretch away of Damian Lillard, and it's, regardless of what you think, for how handicapped they were in terms of what they could do and how limited they were in terms of assets and moves, they pulled something out of their ass. Pardon my French. But they were able to go out and get a better version of Brook Lopez, even than the one that won a championship. Maybe not as good rebounding, but Lopez wasn't a good rebounder at this point in his career. So Myles Turner is going to be able to do that. You kept Jericho Sims to be this athletic rim running guy. You got Bobby Portis back on an affordable deal. It wasn't like you were going to get a better option than him. And they brought back most of the core. So I think being able to have someone who's going to mimic Brook Lopez's impact, that's younger, that just came off a championship run, right? Supposedly retaining Giannis Antetokounmpo, this team works for what they need. Okay, no one's going to take the ball out of Giannis's hand. And if you look at the salary right now, they have Kuzma and Turner making salaries north of 20 million. The only salary in the teens is Bobby Portis. Well, it's 13. Yeah. And then 54 million going to Giannis Antetokounmpo. So let me take a sip of Powerade. The money is well staggered. Yes, there are a bunch of smaller minimum or just above the minimum contracts, but having Kevin Porter, Bobby Portis, Kyle Kuzma contracts allow them to stack salary if they were in a pinch and having to make a move. So what is their total payroll? They are currently at 171 million. My apology. I was looking through my numbers and confirming $171.8 million in total salaries plus the dead money of Vasilija Micic and Damian Lillard. Now, the luxury tax line is 187.9. They have 18.4 million in room. Now, the unlikely bonuses and everything pushes them just below $21.76 million below the first apron. I like this, okay? With a team that understands that they have to do salary cap gymnastics, John Horst, their general manager, was able to stretch Damian Lillard's contract, regardless of how you feel about that, and get themselves out of the cap handicap and kind of gain some financial flexibility that they didn't have, regardless of the draft capital that they don't have, and kind of being put in this situation where they're going to have to take veteran minimum contract players and things like that and continue to make moves around the margin to improve. I think he did what all you could do. So on the two ways, we mentioned it before, Jamaree Bouyea and Mark Sears. I forgot to mention Pete Nance, Larry Nance's younger brother, who's more of a 4 and kind of, I wouldn't say he played at the 3, but he could play some small ball 5. They have $3.65 million in the mid-level exception, and that'll expire on the 12th of April. For them, they have some two-way guys that actually could be converted into standard contracts in Jamaree Bouyea and Pete Nance, as both of those guys could become, complementary role players. I think still having that $3.65 million and just under, $3.7 million in terms of mid-level exception. I'm just going to say MLE, just out of simplicity. To me, I think that's going to allow them to have some flexibility for potentially going out and getting someone in the buyout market that they might have not been able to get had they spent that money, because they'll be able to offer more than some other teams. So let's just go over what they did, and that was Damian Lillard blows out his Achilles. They lose in the playoffs again. They waive and stretch him. The Bucks are tied to $22.5 million over the next 5 seasons of that dead money. Now, that's all they had to do. That's all they could do. The cap mobility kind of was gained by doing that, and it allowed them to go out and get Myles Turner, Cole Anthony, and return the rest of their playoff experienced roster. Despite this financial impact that will impact long term, the Bucks were able to improve the roster and depth and youth of this team, getting younger, getting longer, and getting better, while preserving Giannis as the foundation, hopefully. So I think retaining a core that went 10-4 in Giannis's offseason, or Giannis's absence, is huge, and this offseason being a critical one for them, maybe or maybe not keeping or not keeping Giannis. Their front court got better. They replaced Brook Lopez and got Myles Turner, who's a better defender at this point and a better shooter. They were able to bring in Markovic as a stash option who could actually parlay into a really good player. They still have some of the mid-level exception to maybe convince a good buyout candidate or trade player, or trade and use that in a trade as a tool to use. So yes, stretching, That salary might create challenges down the road, but the roster is better positioned than it was last year or this year in 2025 to 26 to make a run. That's it. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts if you made it to the end. If you did, probably enjoy this type of content because you're at the end. Like, comment, and subscribe.